My name is Breanna Ribeiro. I'm an academic advisor in the Advising and Academic Support Center, and I'm going to turn it over to Professor Sharon Paterson.
Thank you. So what I hope to do in just a few minutes is to give an overview of what the heck is interdisciplinary studies, why do we do it, what do we hope that students gain from it, and the famous question is, what's your major? And people often say, well, I'm not sure, I'm interested in this and this and this and this. And sometimes those interests may not seem connected. And so 3D, as we call it, triple discipline in interdisciplinary studies, is really a way to combine similar or very different areas of interest. And that may sound like, well, then how do I get a degree in that if there's so many different majors? And so what we do to make sure that you gain knowledge and gain skills is that we use the lists of classes for whatever your area is. So for a typical major, say you're going to major in biology, you have a list that says you have to take these classes. Well, we have the same approach to reach the outcomes for 3D or interdisciplinary studies, where you take what we call minor check sheets or certificates where you say, I have a minor in, I'll use my particular area, sociology, and I want a minor in graphic art, and I want to also minor in the leadership certificate. So each of those 3 areas that you choose have a list of classes that you need to take. And our students will explain their journey to 3D, so you'll get a little bit of an example of what that looks like. So when you think about, well, how do I know which 3 to choose to get to these outcomes? There's a couple different ways that you can approach it. One is to say, I don't know. And so you can start your exploration to say, I'm going to take my gen ed, my foundation classes in these different areas and wait for a discovery about what those areas are. And then you can kind of work your way into those 3 areas. Another way is to say, I want to be a music entrepreneur, but we don't have a music entrepreneur degree explicitly. So you can say, I can combine these things together to make that particular degree that doesn't exist. So you might take the bridge to career, you would take music, and then you would maybe take anthropology or some other kind of context that you might want to add to your music entrepreneur kind of approach. So you might have a degree in mind. The kind of third way is that you maybe choose a different major, which is totally fine, but maybe you do some exploring and then you have this variety of credits that you think, how do these fit together? That may be a way you come back into 3D and say, oh, how can I creatively put my multiple changing of majors into a category? Again, our hope is that we create a degree that represents multiple areas. We help you knit those experiences together to be able to articulate that into an employer, be able to articulate that to families when they say, what is this thing? And also in the process of being a 3D or interdisciplinary studies major, we try to connect you with other students. And so that's part of what the classes are structured. We try to, have some face-to-face time with majors that are in multiple minors. And also there's a group of faculty that are part of the Interdisciplinary Studies Committee. So we try to anticipate maybe some communication gaps, try to connect you with mentors so that you have a home base, if you will. You have a group of folks that make it feel like it's a major, even though it's very eccentric and perhaps esoteric and diverse across the campus. So I will add any other information as needed, but want to turn it over so you can hear from the students. So Grace or Kate?
Yeah, I can go. So I didn't know, well, I kind of heard about the interdisciplinary studies program a little bit early on, but I hadn't really considered it. Because when I went into college, I was like, oh, I'm going to get the practical degree. I'm going to get my business degree, and it's going to make sense for me. So I was kind of swayed by thinking that business is going to be this, something practical, and it's going to get me a job and things like that too. And then I realized that I was totally not happy in it at all. And so I kept taking classes and I was like, I'm not interested in any of this. Excuse me. So then I added a gender studies minor. Oh my goodness, hold on. So then I added a gender studies minor to my business degree. And then I ended up loving my minor way more than my major. And I was like, okay, well, that doesn't really make sense. So then I started looking into, okay, like what if I wanted to add a sociology minor too? And then I was like, okay, I need to change my whole degree then. So I started looking into doing the 3D program. And I remember walking out of like my business like counseling appointment and just walking straight into the Smash building and getting an appointment for 3D and being like, okay, I want to look into this more. And so then after like meeting with a counselor like 2 other times, she recommended me taking the IDS class. So then after taking the class, it made the transition like into taking the degree a lot better, because then I got to meet like more people that are also struggling with the same things with their degree, and kind of taking like more guidance and pathways on what classes to take, and having more like one-on-one counselor help as well. And I'm honestly so happy that I made the transition in my degree, just because like I feel so much happier with what I am doing now. It's always really funny like explaining it to people, because they're like, what's your degree? And I'm like, well, I do 3D. And they're like, what is that? Is that graphic design? I'm like, no. It means that I have like 3 minors instead of 1 major. So my minors now are gender studies, sociology, and criminal justice. And then that equals my 3D degree.
Okay, so I don't actually have a very exciting story like Grace for how I got into interdisciplinary. So what I want to do with my life is be an author, which would be great. But I also want to make sure that I'm not a starving artist on the path to becoming an author. So my thought was I'm going to get a major in marketing, and I'm going to minor in psychology, because that's interesting and useful and kind of connects with marketing. So during orientation, one of the orientation leaders just kind of offhand says, oh, and there's this 3-discipline thing where you can take 3 minors and make them into a major, and then just moves on with his life. And I'm like, I can do what? And so then I started playing out. I went through a couple ideas before I settled on what I'm doing now, because I hadn't heard of narrative arts. So what I have now are narrative arts, psychology, and marketing for my 3 minors. And so those are all, what's fun about that is that I can like connect that to what I actually want to do. And I can, if I, whatever narrative arts and psychology bring to the publishing table, I can then market that with marketing thing. And I can also, get a marketing job, something like that. So that's nice. And so one of the things that I'm going to do, hopefully, we'll see what COVID does, hopefully this coming academic year, I'm going to be studying abroad in Ireland, Cork, and I have had to use up some of my electives to get for my marketing minor, but there is a little extra elective space in the 3D program, which I'm going to fill up with folklore classes while I'm in Ireland. And yeah, that's kind of the big plans.
Awesome. I'm kind of wanting to know a little bit more about if either of you are doing any internships, or if working in the class or with an IDS advisor, you've been able to create new opportunities, such as the study abroad. But is there any other instances that come to mind?
Well, I'm actually doing an internship in the fall for the Juvenile Detention Center here in Boise. It was kind of funny because they were asking me about like my degree when I was interning for them and everything. And they do get a lot of social work majors because they have to have an internship in order to graduate. And so they're kind of used to just like cycling those through along with other people with criminal justice. So when I was kind of able to share with them about, well, here's what I'm doing and here's what I'm learning, it made it a lot more interesting for them to want to, it made honestly a little more marketable to be able to tell them about what all I'm doing, you know?
Yeah, and of course, Breanna, as you know, I've gotten a lot of help from you on like figuring out how I'm gonna plot out the my major path, especially with study abroad. As far as internships go, I haven't done any of those yet. My father works at a real estate company, so they don't have room for a marketing intern this summer, unfortunately. But he's talked to them a lot, and as he said, like everyone he talks to is like, oh, that would be really cool to get for a job. Like that's interesting. That's something else. So even if I haven't taken advantage of it yet, there are signs that like this is a useful thing.
A couple of things that might add and respond to your question is in the class, I try to help facilitate people knowing more about themselves, not only what their interests are, but also we watched this video about multi-potentialites, and that seems to be really validating to folks to say, oh, we talk about in college finding your passion, which often sounds like one single thing, but it's really can change, it can be interconnected. And so that's one thing that try to validate what those opportunities might look like, that they don't have to be similar. The other thing is there's a little personality test that people take. It's one that people have done before, but in this context, I think it's helpful to say, how do I solve problems? It's patterned after Myers-Briggs, but it's another way to say, what am I predisposed to be like, think like, that might be able to connect with an opportunity. And then the last thing is also that they have to do a job exploration. So again, either doing information interviews or exploring what they might do with that particular job. We also talk about whether you're a generalist or a specialist. So again, those opportunities to articulate what and why of what you're doing in that moment is hopefully leading to other opportunities.
And Clayton, just to give you like kind of some context, so once you are like thinking about doing the interdisciplinary studies degree and like kind of like declare it, I guess, do you have to declare it? Then you take the IDS class, and so then the class like connects you with like the advisors and the people in the class just to like give you more information about the degree that you'd be taking. And then like once you complete it, then you're officially becoming like an IDS major. So it kind of gives you some room to figure out if you do want to do it still and kind of figuring out some more information. So that's kind of like what we're talking about too.
Got it. And is that just a semester, the class?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just one credit, so it doesn't take up like too much time out of your schedule and things like that. But yeah, so it's a hybrid class too. I don't know if the hybrid class is still going to remain the same. So half of it is online, and then this past semester we met 4 times as a group together. So
Got it. Cool.
Do you have any other questions that come to mind, Clayton, that you want to bring to the group?
Yeah. This is all really good information. Thank you so much to all of you. I guess one of my chief questions is, one of the minors I'm interested in is dance. And I'm like, Grace kind of briefly explained to this, I'm a total newbie. I've never been to college, and the logistics of it are not in my head. But like, as far as like something like dance, is that like a situation where you would have to be like accepted into the program? If that makes sense.
Right. So I'm looking up right now the minors and certificates, because off the top of my head, I am trying to see what those requirements are, since that's a very specific question. So give me 1 minute, and I don't know if anyone
No worries. Thank you.
Yeah, but in terms of getting into the IDS program in general, it's really just speaking and working with an advisor like myself a couple times, taking that class, and then building that degree plan, and for you to understand what 3 areas you want to study. So there's no
Got it.
formal admissions process. It's just kind of going through this
Yeah.
exploratory phase. But I'll look up that specific question around dance if anyone else.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank
and
you.
If you're not sure totally about what minors you want to take, you can also just kind of like look at the degree as a whole and then take some gen eds and like some electives here and there in the meantime. And then the semester after that, you can get like more specific in what you want to do too.
Got it.
Yeah, so something you might like, it's not exactly degree specific. I know someone who knows someone who's like majoring in dance, so I wish I could tell you about that. But there are like quite a few dance clubs around here. I don't know like what types you're interested in. I'm in the country swing club. I know there's like a Lindy Hop club, a Latin dance club, so I don't know, that might be fun for you.
Yeah, that's good to know.
I don't
So
think-
there is a minor in dance, which I did think, and I can honestly, you can go on the Boise State website, and so you can look for the majors and minors through there. Just type in dance minor, and it'll show up with all the
Okay.
requirements for that. But quite quickly, it is 28, 29 credits is the dance minor. But in terms of any form of audition to get in that, I was just starting to also look into that. I know for some music, there is an audition either for a certain instrument or for also singing as well. Off the top of my head, I'm not quite sure if there is one for dance, and it's not saying so in the minor requirements. But
Yeah.
I don't think
the
there
I
is.
understand it's a very specific question.
Yeah,
I don't
but
think there's a audition.
Okay.
yeah, so that would be one of your areas, right? And so you'd want to think about your educational and career goals to kind of figure out, okay, what are my 2 other areas? Whatever your goals are and want to be, you think what other areas would help me achieve those goals in combination with dance. So that's kind of how the process would somewhat
Right.
begin.
Welcome, Ansley.
Hi.
So we're in the Q&A session of this, so feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions you may have about IDS, or feel free to put them in the chat if you're more comfortable with that.
Clayton, what other areas were you thinking about maybe? Or do you know?
Business and sociology were the other 2 areas that I was interested in.
That would be a great combination. There's the bridge to career, which is maybe a bolt-on would be a way to think about it, that has a sampling of business skills, spreadsheets, for example, basic marketing, that a lot of students take as a companion to other majors. It doesn't have the same set of prerequisite building blocks as other pieces within a business degree. So that's a nice, like I said, bolt on to other degrees. And then I'm in sociology, so I'm a bit biased, but complementing your dance and your business with a social science is really powerful to think about the questions, the way of seeing the world. Some aspects of methodology are incredibly transferable to all the different careers you might have in your lifetime.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I'm interested in business, but I mean, not like just for the sake of business and the sake of making money. Like, I'm very interested in like just like it as a tool, and I mean, I think it's evolving at a rapid rate, and so I think sociology seems like a really good complement to that. as far as just like understanding, you know, people in the way that people interact.
A quick plug for the Gen Ed. One of the general education requirements you need to take is oral communication, and you have an option between calm oral communication or sociological communication. And so the sociological communication looks at a lot of the power dynamics and group relations in a bit different way than the oral communication that's it's not so much public speaking in the comm department, but it asks different questions in terms of that communication piece. So even just as building your whole career, that could be something that it's Social 122.
What's the, like, I guess, like, who do you consult with, like, as far as just like deciding, like, just navigating the IDS program?
Great question. So that would be an interdisciplinary studies advisor, such as myself. We have a team of 3 people who have appointments on our calendar every single week that are open for students who are just interested in exploring the major a bit more, or if they want to actually start kind of piecing together what that interdisciplinary studies major would be. So that appointment can be quite informal, or it can be quite a working appointment where you're really looking at requirements, mapping it out together. And so I did put in the chat the link to book an appointment with myself or the 2 other interdisciplinary studies students. So I would reference that moving forward. But yeah, that first meeting is quite informal. We try to give you a lot of information so that you can take that information on your own time, review it, do a little bit more research, do some reflection, and then you can schedule another appointment if you're ready to kind of say, these are my goals and this is what I'm thinking. You don't need to know 100%, but if you do want to continue pursuing IDS, you kind of bring to us where you're at, and then we get you into that Introduction to Interdisciplinary Studies class, which Sharon teaches and which both Grace and Kate are finishing up right now. And so it's in that course where you really map it out more and kind of solidify it and make that decision that, yes, this is for me.
Got it. So do students often take that class their first semester, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily, but you definitely can. It's often because most students don't know about the option of interdisciplinary studies that the earliest we get most incoming students is usually in the spring or the following fall. However, there's no hard rule about when you can take that class. I don't know if you want to speak to more on that, Sharon.
Yeah, just real quick, there's maybe 3 or 4 out of the 30 that are in their first year at Boise State, and first time students, they're not transferring. And so they've liked it from having kind of a roadmap, but they also liked it because, say they had 3 areas and they decided to change one of them, then they just change that one area and they keep the other 2. So there's still some flexibility even if you start right away. That you can change within that 3. You know, you're mostly working on your gen ed, so you have still a lot of flexibility and exploration, but you start with the home base. Some of the other folks that maybe think that they're undecided, then they choose a major, and then they're like, oh, no, I'm really undecided, and I should have chosen those 3 interdisciplinary studies in the first place. So there's both.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's all I have right now. I guess a follow-up question to that would be, like, what would be some good, if I was interested in being in the class my first semester, what would be like some good steps to take to lay the groundwork for that?
You can take the Myers-Briggs test if you want. You can like do that ahead of time. It's like 16personalities.com, I think. So that's one way to like get ahead.
Well, Well, from a major standpoint, you would just determine that you wanted to be pre-IDS, which is what you would do if you declared a major no matter what it was. You basically, in your, what we call the student center, indicate what your major is. And then that would definitely include you in the outreach from the advising office to say, hey, you know, here's what your first semester classes can look like. So when you build your fall schedule, then they would say, what do you want to take this now? Excuse me. And so then you would decide whether you wanted to take it in the fall or whether you wanted to take it in the spring. And so it really would be part of that process of building your first semester schedule and what makes sense with your other gen ed classes that you want to take.
Got it.
Yeah, for new students, you'll be going through a virtual online orientation this summer, which hopefully you've gotten information in your Bronco email to sign up for. But a part of that orientation is an advising session with an advisor in the major that you have declared. And if you're not declared, which is totally fine, you meet with an undeclared advisor. So during that meeting, you could express your interest towards interdisciplinary studies. But if you really are, you know, pretty confident that this is something you want to explore, I would suggest, encourage meeting with an interdisciplinary studies advisor prior, because it's going to be that advisor who's able to ensure that you get in that fall class, since it's a little bit of the introductory class needs a permission number, and it's a little bit of a special topics class. So yeah, it's kind of up to you. You can wait to explore it. Or if you are quite confident, yeah, go ahead and set up that extra meeting with an IDS advisor prior to orientation.
Okay, good to know. Thank you so much.
So it looks like we have a question in the chat. I've been thinking about either taking a communications or art dual major or working through the interdisciplinary studies program. How would IDS be more beneficial? I'm thinking of a career in advertising, such as a creative director, but I'm sort of unsure about it. So just off the top of my head, usually how it kind of works with IDS is if you feel that you have 3 areas that you really want to include that is not possible to do through either a dual major or just a single major and a minor. That's usually when IDS is a really great option to really build what you want based on those specific educational or career goals. In terms of these broader learning objectives, I don't know if Sharon wants to speak to that a bit more specifically, but yeah, in terms of the career, you can always work with the Career Services Center on campus in order to make an IDS major basically fulfill those specific career goals.
Looks like Kate was ready to jump in with her story.
Oh, yeah, like I'm not completely sure, but like that does look like the start of a pretty good 3D thing. I mean, I like the art part of it, but like, so you could do the art, the communications, maybe throw in marketing or PR. You could do it like I did, put in psychology, because honestly, that's a really important part of marketing. You have to like get into people's heads, and you know, bend them to your will, fun stuff. But I think that would probably like help you stand out, you know. That's just my thoughts, my 2 cents.
I think there's a lot of commitment to doing a dual major as well. It's a lot of work to be able to do that. But having the IDS, you can at least change what you want to do. So let's say you do communications and art, and okay, I want to add a 3rd area. What is that? You're not adding an extra load in a sense, because it's your same amount of credits that you'll be taking regardless. And like, let's say you end up, you're like, oh, I really don't like communications, but now I've declared it as one of my majors. That's a lot to kind of change. So at least for 3D, if you have like art, and then you're like, okay, well, like maybe I don't like communications as much, so let me do marketing. And then it's like, okay, well, now I have some free range here. What's my 3rd area that I want to do? So like I was kind of saying, dual majoring is, it's a big commitment to do that, and not to try to scare you out of doing that. I think it just could be a lot of work. But at least for IDS, you do have more room to kind of explore what you want to do and back out with like less consequences, if that makes sense too.
The thing I would add real quickly is that you sound like you have a lot of interests. And when I talked to students about what they liked about 3D and interdisciplinary studies, is they said, I get bored really easily. I'm like really into something and then I want to change, and I like having a variety of classes in my semester. And so that's another thing, that if you like to dabble, but then also have creative outlets and, you know, feel like you're being productive and learning different things, that's also another great way that you could combine your art with comm, because art can be really focused, which is a good thing, but it's nice to have these other aspects instead of being in studio for many, many hours every semester. People really like that variety in the interdisciplinary studies program, particularly if you feel like you have lots of different interests.
Also a really great class if you like art, just throwing this out there, Humanities 207 with Elizabeth Cook. I had never really cared that much about art beyond, oh, that's pretty, like the art history, I mean, but it was really fascinating. So like, if you get the chance, I would recommend doing that if you like art.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about earlier too, if you go on like Boise State's like majors and minors finders, you can go through the minors list and then kind of piece together what else you want to add to that. So let's say like, oh, okay, like maybe something like this in advertising is going to make me like more marketable in a sense. And you can add something, or just purely for interest. Just be like, oh, I'm kind of interested in this. Let me kind of add this certificate or this minor. So it might help too, just like going through the minors list and the certificates list and kind of finding what you want to do. Yeah, and then in the chat, there's a link to that. Thanks.
Awesome. So I want to be respectful of everyone's time and also thank everyone for taking time out of their Saturday to represent interdisciplinary studies, and to the prospective students. Welcome to Boise State, and we hope you consider IDS further. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to schedule an appointment with an interdisciplinary studies advisor, or you can just send an email as well. Let me make sure I put that in there. Is there any other final remarks from any of the other presenters?
Good luck.
Enjoy what you do, what you're learning about.
It's okay to have lots of interests.
Thank you so much to all of you. I really appreciate it.
Good luck. Be well.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. If there are any follow-up questions, I just put in the chat the email address to the Advising the Academic Support Center. So that can be a great resource if you're not ready to have an appointment. But yes, be well and take care. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.